Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Storytime from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. The story we have for you today comes from Japan and is a story about a young girl looking for her father. This is the story of the Samurai Maiden. Once, long ago, in the islands of Japan, which lay like a pearl necklace stretched out along the sea, the emperor had a great samurai warrior named Oribe Shima. And Oribe Shima did something that the emperor didn't like, and so the emperor banished him. He sent him to the Oki Islands, which are little tiny rocky islands. Well, Oribe Shima had a little daughter, and her name was Tokoyo, and she loved her father very much. But when he was sent away, all of his lands were taken, and many of his goods, and she really didn't have a whole lot of money left. And so her old nurse took care of her, and they lived down by the shore with the pearl divers, and Tokoyo learned to be a pearl diver, to dive down under the water and to stay down for a long time, gathering all of the shells, all of the oysters that have pearls in them, and then to come back up to the surface, how to breathe for a long time, so that she could survive underwater for a long time, how to gather all of the shells and carry them up tied up in her sash, and how to open them up and find the pearls which they could sell in the marketplace for a price that would get them enough food and clothing and shelter. Well, when Tokoyo grew older, she decided that she was going to go and find her father. It had been so many years since anyone had heard from them. She really wanted to find him again. And so she did. She set out from the village, and she went to the village of Akasaki, which is right on the shore and is the closest place to get to the Oki Islands. But she could not get anyone from the village of Akasaki to take her to the Oki Islands, for the sea was rough and dangerous, and besides, it was not legal. It was illegal for anyone to go to visit those who were banished, and the punishment, if you did it, was death. And so no one would go to the Oki Islands unless they had to. Well, Tokoyo was not going to be stopped by that. So she bought a small boat and a little bit of food, and she set out across the sea to the Oki Islands. And fortune could have been cruel to her, but instead she decided to be kind. And eventually Tokoyo made it to the Oki Islands. She was very tired and very hungry, for she had eaten all of her food on the journey. And she was so tired, she just decided to find a sheltered corner and sleep for a while. And that's what she did. When she woke up, she began to walk into the island to try to find people. The first person she came across, she asked him, "Good father, I am looking for my father, Oribe Shima, the great samurai lord. Perhaps you have heard of him? Can you tell me where I might find him?" "Oh, I do not know Oribe Shima," said the man, "but I also cannot tell you anything. I am sorry. It would be more than my life would be worth if I tried to tell you where to find him, even if I knew." "Oh," said Tokoyo, "I am sorry. Thank you." And she continued down the road. Well, now Tokoyo knew that even though she was now in the Oki Islands, she still could not ask anyone to find out where her father was. For although she did not fear death herself, she did not want anyone else to die just because she asked them a question. And so she began to just wander the island, looking for her father, but unable to ask anyone where to look. Because she had no money left. She did not have any money to buy food, and she was forced to beg from strangers. But she knew that it was a way to survive, and although she was not happy that she had to beg, she did it with grace and with dignity. Well, one day, as she wandered, She came to the edge of a rocky cliff overlooking the sea, and there on the cliff was a shrine to Buddha. And Tokoyo decided that, well, since she couldn't ask anyone else for help, she could ask the Buddha for help, and perhaps he would send someone to help her. And so she knelt down at the shrine and she began to pray. And she prayed so fervently and for so long that she fell asleep. Well, when she woke up, she could hear someone crying and someone clapping. It was a very odd combination of sounds, and so she sat up and she looked around. And what she saw coming toward her was a Buddhist priest and a young girl, both of them dressed in flowing white robes. And the girl was crying, and the priest was clapping. Well, they went to the cliff's edge, and as the priest finished clapping, he turned to the girl, who continued to cry, and he put his hands out as though he were going to push her over the edge. And Tokoyo was so startled, she did not want that girl to die, that she ran out and grabbed the girl just before the priest pushed her over the edge and pulled her back. Well, the priest looked at her and he said, "I can tell from your actions that you are not from this place, or you would not have tried to stop me." "Why were you pushing her into the sea?" said Tokoyo. "She will die down there." And the priest said, "Well, you see, this area is haunted by an evil serpent named Yofune Nushi. Yofune Nushi, he causes great storms in the sea, and our fishermen drown if we do not give him one young girl, not yet 15. Every year on this day, we must push her into the sea just here, and then he does not cause the great storms, and we are able to fish safely." Well, Tokoyo thought about that for a moment, and then she decided that if she could not live a happy life with her father, then she would die a death of sacrifice, a samurai lord's daughter. And so she said to the priest, "Let me take the place of this girl. I am not yet 15, and I will go as the sacrifice into the ocean." And the priest thought that that might work, and so Tokoyo put on the girl's white robe, tied the sash round her waist, and then she took the only thing of value that she had left, a dagger that had belonged to her father and to all of his fathers before him. And for you see, Tokoyo did not plan to just go into the water and just give up and die. No. She had a plan. She was going to try to defeat the great serpent. So she took the knife and she held it between her teeth as the pearl divers had taught her. And then she jumped off the edge of the cliff and fell down, down, down into the water and down deep under the water. And when she opened her eyes and all of the bubbles had subsided, she could see in front of her a great big cave glittering with jewels and shells. And it looked like there was someone sitting inside the cave, a person sitting inside the cave. And so Tokoyo swam inside the cave to see what she could see. And what she found was not a person, but rather a wooden statue of one. In fact, it was a wooden statue of the emperor who had exiled her father. Well, Tokoyo thought, if I cannot strike at the emperor, at least I can strike at his statue. And she took the knife out of her mouth, and as she was beginning to get ready to strike the knife across that statue, suddenly she thought, no, this is not what my father would do. My father would repay good for evil. And so instead, she put the knife back between her teeth, and she took off the sash around her robe, and she tied the statue to her back with the sash. and then she began to swim out of the cave. But just as she got out to the mouth of the cave, just as she got outside the cave, suddenly she found herself greeted by a giant serpent with glowing eyes and glowing, glittering scales and 100 tiny feet. And he opened his mouth, and all of his teeth glittered and glowed as if they were covered in phosphorescence, that glowy stuff that's in the ocean. Well, Tokoyo did not hesitate. She swam straight toward the serpent, for she was sure this must be Yofune Nushi. And she struck at him with her knife, and she hit him right in his right eye. And she stuck the knife in, and he went instantly blind in that eye. And it was so painful that Yofune Nushi began to throw his head around and writhe and squirm and wallowing in the water. And Tokoyo would not let go of the knife, so she was thrown around with the head of the serpent as it thrashed from side to side, till finally she was able to get the knife free. And as soon as she got that knife free, the serpent tried very hard to go back to his cave to retreat from this horrible pain. But with one eye blinded, it was not easy to see where he was going, and he missed the mouth of the cave and was instead running around in front of it, trying to find it. Well, Tokoyo waited until the right moment, and then she struck out again with her knife, and she hit the serpent right in the heart and killed it. With the last of her breath, she took the end of the sash and she tied it around the serpent's head, and she pushed for the surface with everything she had in her. Can you imagine the surprise of the priest and the young girl who had been standing up on the cliff's edge watching the water writhe and boil and squirm ever since Tokoyo had jumped inside? And they suddenly see her break the surface with a wooden statue tied to her back with her sash, and towing behind her the dead body of the evil serpent. Well, the priest and the young girl were so happy and excited. They rushed down off that cliff, down to the beach, and they helped to pull Tokoyo out of the water and pull out that great serpent. Poor Tokoyo was so tired she could barely crawl. And so the priest stood guard while she took a little nap, and the young girl ran into the village to tell everyone what had happened. The villagers were so excited and so happy to be free from the curse of the evil serpent Yofune Nushi. They came running out of the village, and they picked Tokoyo up and they put her on a litter, which is a platform that they all carried on their shoulders. And they brought her back to their village, where all of the women had been preparing a grand feast, and they had such a celebration. It was so exciting to finally be free from the serpent. In fact, word of Tokoyo's deeds spread very, very quickly, and someone who was on the islands and was going back to Japan brought the story with them, and word spread there very, very quickly, and it came to the ears of the emperor. Now, you see, the emperor, he had been suffering from a very strange illness that nobody could figure out. And then suddenly, a few days before he received the story of Tokoyo's deeds, he suddenly felt better. And when he heard the story, he realized that Tokoyo's saving of the statue had happened at the same day that he had suddenly started to feel better. And he asked all of his advisors about it, and his magicians and his wise men. They got together and they said, Emperor, it is because the statue must have been cursed and then thrown into the sea, and that is why you have been ill. So when the girl saved the village, she also saved the life of the emperor. This is a very good girl, and a very strong one, said the emperor. Who is this girl? What is her name? And they were told her that her name was Tokoyo, and she was the daughter of Oribe Shima. Oribe Shima. He is one of my samurai lords, and I banished him. For his daughter's great deed in saving the village and saving my life, Oribe-shima may come back from banishment." And so Tokoyo was fetched, and Oribe-shima was fetched, and they came back to Japan, and they were so happy to see each other once again. And when the emperor found out that Oribe-shima's lands had been taken from him, and that Tokoyo had had to sell everything that she had to find her father, everything was given back to them. And they found Tokoyo's old nurse, and they brought her back to live with them, and they lived very happily together to the end of their days. And that is the tale of the Samurai Maiden from Japan. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will come back and join us again on Friday at 3 p.m. Central Time. We will have another story for you here from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.